Yes, people, hope you're all well and enjoying your summers. Today's video is my full impressions of Battlefield 6. This video is dropping later than I'd like, as I did initially plan it immediately after I'd played the beta, but then life got in the way. I've since, however, dropped 3 Battlefield 6 gameplay videos, so please check them out if you want to see a Battlefield veteran handle business. I'll link them at the end of this video for those interested. Giving my impressions later than planned has also given me the benefit of new information regarding changes, etc. for the final release, so I'll go through them a bit later in the video. But for now, let's get stuck in. Now, I love Battlefield as a franchise. This gave me some of my happiest gaming memories from my youth. I first discovered the franchise back on Battlefield 2 Modern Combat on the original Xbox, and immediately fell in love with the franchise and its open sandbox interpretation of video game war. I played and hit max rank in every single Battlefield game over the course of the following decades, even doing Battlefield 4 twice, on both Xbox 360 and then on PS4 when I jumped back to PlayStation. I've lost thousands of hours on this franchise until Battlefield 5. It was at this point that I felt the innovation had expired. Gaming was in the shitter after endless lootbox and microtransaction hell, and every gaming release seemingly launched half-baked and unfinished, and I just couldn't continuously invest until the franchise was back on track. That obviously didn't happen with the abomination that was 2042. Now that might have improved over time, and I've heard folk even praise it for being in a better state these days. But for OG veterans like myself, it just wasn't a Battlefield game in my eyes. How they had the audacity to release it in the state it was should not be forgotten.
Absolutely fucking not.
Now, EA knew they had to do something to revive one of their most profitable IPs, and considering there's decades of data and entire communities of ex-players offering a blueprint for success, it's absolutely astonishing it's taken them this long to wake up and realize what makes a good Battlefield game. Now, I realize I'm in my 40s, so these games aren't really aimed at me so much anymore, so there's always going to have to be allowances and compromises as far as my personal expectations are concerned. That I can admit. But with that being said, I still think there's a core formula to this franchise that must be met for it to be even considered a Battlefield game. This formula consists of things like squad play, classes, vehicles, and destructible environments, all in a grounded setting. And thankfully, it appears as far as Battlefield 6 is concerned, we're 3/4 of the way there. After time spent across both open betas, I was pleasantly surprised by the experience on offer this time around. Sure, we'd all seen the leaked gameplay from the Battlefield labs in alpha testing, but you never truly know until you play it yourself and get a feel for the mechanics and game loop. But I was pleased with that aspect for sure. It felt like a Battlefield game. It felt like I was home. Visually, it looks like a Battlefield game. Sadly for us peasantry console players though, our version of the beta wasn't outputting the full fidelity we can expect at launch, but even at 1440p, this was a pretty game. The lighting was decent, the graphics and textures on point, the overall palette was realistic military vibes. No glowing unicorns and cartoons in sight, thankfully. The destruction has clearly gone through some evolution over the years after becoming stagnant and somewhat non-existent in 2042. This time, we're back, and there's a good amount of scenery and buildings that can be leveled to create new pathways or just give us those destructive Battlefield moments we thirst for. There's a good amount of detail in individual map assets that showcase the destruction engine, and these little details is what brings the whole experience to life. I did have my concerns about this side of Battlefield 6 prior to playing, as it seemed to me the real wizards behind the famous Battlefield Destruction and Levolution had left DICE to form their own studio, Embark, who are responsible for the absolutely fantastic game, The Finals, which for me is still the standard bearer of destruction in a first-person shooter. But thankfully, after hiring many new talents, it appears we have a great destruction system to wreak havoc with once more, delivering those explosive moments we love about this franchise. The sound design is great, for the most part. With a good headset, you can hear all the explosions galore, the individual bricks from collapsing structures tickle your eardrums, players scream for medics in anguish, and it all comes together to set the scene. My criticism of the sound lies in the actual weapon gunfire. For me, it's far too quiet. Every rifle sounds suppressed for some reason. It's immediately noticeable if you play a lot of first-person shooters and then jump on Battlefield 6. It just lacks some punch for me personally. But it's something that I adapted to over time, and it wasn't really a big enough issue to change my overall feelings towards the game. It's also an easy fix, I'd imagine, in the grand scheme of things, so nothing too concerning. So, Battlefield 6 looks like Battlefield, sounds like Battlefield, but did it play like Battlefield? Now, this is typically the polarizing point where everyone is individually different with their own expectations, memories, and nostalgia of past games. So I'm sure it may feel off for some people, and that I can appreciate. but for me, it did feel like Battlefield, and that's a firm W.
Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on! Ah!
It felt nice to play, and I found myself eager to play again the next day, and once the beta ended, I missed not being able to play it at all. So to feel that way after just a beta tells me they're onto something here. All the new movement animations, whether you're leaning and tilting around corners, or shooting whilst prone on your side, it felt versatile and snappy, and genuinely fun to play. Sure, there were times it could be infuriating when your team is spawn trapped, but I think most of these concerns from the beta are due to the map sizes we were given access to. I think the devs were trying to win over the COD community by showcasing the smaller, tighter maps, but for me this actually inadvertently hurt the experience, as the only map that truly had a decent scale was Liberation Peak. I'm confident both at launch and post-launch we'll have access to the real Battlefield showpiece maps that will provide the large-scale warfare we craved. And that pretty much leads me to my biggest concerns for Battlefield 6, the maps. I personally wasn't the biggest fan of the maps on offer in the beta. Siege of Cairo was fine, I just grew a little tired when the matchmaking loads Cairo for the 4th time in a row, but as a map, it was adequate. And a throwback to the likes of Grand Bazaar from Battlefield 3 and 4. Iberian Offensive, which is set Gibraltar, was also fine, nothing special, and again, all focused on ground warfare and predominantly close quarters combat. It's an okay map. Empire State was absolutely terrible. That map to me felt like a Call of Duty map rather than a Battlefield map, just an absolute shit show of chaos and respawning into death. It actually reminded me of Shipping Container from Call of Duty, which is equally shit if you don't suffer from ADHD. Liberation Peak was by far the closest we got to the traditional Battlefield experience with landed air vehicles present, and a larger open space, which just gave it a much healthier pace and better all-round experience. Apparently, Liberation Peak is a mid to large size map from the full game. Well, probably more on the mid-tier in size, I'd say, and that we are promised much larger maps at launch. This for me is critical. I really need those larger maps with vehicle accessibility in an open sandbox where there's some tactics and downtime between the trademark moments, as opposed to the spawn camp chaos of Empire State. There needs to be a healthy balance, at the very least, of larger and smaller maps respectively. I guess the beta got me a little worried that this installment of Battlefield was leaning more towards the close quarter gameplay akin to the likes of Call of Duty multiplayer, and that got me a little concerned. There definitely needs to be 4 or 5 large-scale maps to complement the smaller ones. I'm going to try and stay cautiously optimistic that this is the outcome we land on, certainly by post-launch where I know some larger maps are on the way. Again though, this may just be a concern for some of us and not all of us. Sound off in the comments what your feelings were towards the maps and what, if anything, you'd like to see changed going forwards. As I said, I'd personally like to see more focus on vehicles and more opportunity to use them. Using the beta experience as a point of reference, each team had access to only 1 jet and 1 chopper across 4 maps. I realised the map selection, but still, it seemed way more emphasis was on boots on the ground CQC than expansive all-out warfare. This balance needs to be corrected for launch. Give us more toys to play with, goddammit. Now, one of the most contentious points from the beta was the shotgun. It was way overtuned and absolutely ridiculous. The range and pellet spread was borderline criminal, and with it being on the assault class, you could pair it with another primary weapon and be a killing machine. I noticed something was off when I was repeatedly cross-mapped with it in the first beta weekend, but I had no interest in using it then. But after hearing how broken it was, I ran it for a few matches in the second beta weekend, and holy shit, it was disgusting and definitely in need of a rebalance. Thankfully though, we've already had confirmation it's seen a rework for final release. Amen. There was, as I'm sure most of you experienced, filthy little rats exploiting map geography to rain fire down from out-of-bounds rooftops. This made Siege of Cairo unplayable at the best of times for me and tainted some of my experience with the beta. These same opportunists also exploited their way onto the roofs on Gibraltar too. Such sad times we're in when folk are exploiting and cheating in a beta for no reason whatsoever other than to be dicks. Thankfully, the devs over at Battlefield Studios claim that this exploit has already been fixed for release and it's something we shouldn't have to experience again. There was obviously, as it was documented online, a number of players using cheats already too, which just takes the absolute piss really. I really hope there's some extremely aggressive anti-cheat for the full product. There should be zero mercy for these people, even less so if they're doing it for monetary gain. I don't want to have to switch crossplay off because lobbies become cesspools of exploiters and cheaters. Deal with it and protect your consumers. So, along with the roof exploit, there's been a few other changes to Battlefield 6 for launch. Some of these include changes to movement mechanics, which which have been adjusted to create a more balanced and traditional battlefield experience. Momentum has been reduced from slide jumps, your accuracy is reduced while using movement mechanics, and overall, these tools are more situational. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the shotgun has been nerfed and brought in line with other weapons. There's been some changes to rifles to encourage more controlled tap firing and burst firing, so this all directly responds to data received along with the community feedback during both betas and gives us indication that Battlefield Studios and EA are actively listening to player sentiment and reacting accordingly. It's refreshing to see a beta actually get utilized as a beta to improve the final product rather than a glorified demo for cheap marketing a week prior to release. These changes and many more should hopefully add the final pieces to the Battlefield puzzle and deliver us the experience we've longed for. Another point of contention was regarding classes and the lack of class-locked gameplay. So Battlefield 6 has introduced the ability to carry almost any weapon on any class, fundamentally changing the core gameplay experience. This I'm not a fan of. As a traditionalist Battlefield player, the classes are what creates the teamwork where players' roles synergize and benefit one another. It enforces teamwork and creates a balanced ecosystem that the franchise thrived on for years. I think the classic saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, comes to mind here. That aspect of the game didn't need altering. It was the core makeup of the series. As soon as they deviated from this in the past in Battlefield 2042 and introduced operators, we all saw what happened. It was largely rejected by the community. We wanted and expected class-defined gameplay, that much was obvious. So this time around in Battlefield 6, we now have the core mode, Conquest, split into two. You have the option of playing with locked classes, the traditional vanilla Battlefield experience, or you can opt for unlocked classes and go absolutely bananas. I guess having choice is a positive thing. I just felt from my time in the beta, locked classes were definitely the way to go. Most alarming to me though was when I tried matchmaking the locked class playlist on the beta, it couldn't even find enough players to start a match. So, I'm not sure what that says about the new demographic or the data that now sits with EA and whether or not they'll now abandon locked classes altogether. We will have to see how things play out. I'm sure the full release will be packed full of content. Between all the game modes and the AAA campaign, not to mention Portal, that should hopefully provide content in abundance for years to come, there's a lot of meat on the bone to enjoy regardless of what kind of player you are. Obviously, there's a Battle Royale on the way too, but I predict that will end up being a swamp of degenerate cheaters like every other multiplayer game with high stakes. I believe that's rumoured for an end of October release, but shouldn't affect the core Battlefield 6 experience. So my overall thoughts and impressions of Battlefield 6 are largely positive. My biggest concerns would be map scale and variety at launch. There needs to be a server browser and or map voting between rounds. More focus on vehicles on the larger maps, and possibly introduce 1 or 2 passenger vehicles on the smaller maps. And for the love of Christ, nail down some strong anti-cheat, and anybody caught cheating with hard evidence, delete their ability to play video games indefinitely. If I even get the slightest hint that cheating streamers are being whitelisted and promoted the way Activision does, with its swamp of degenerates on COD, I'm fucking done with this franchise forever. Multiplayer gaming has long been poisoned with frauds posing as gamers, and Twitch has literally given them all a platform to carry out the cheating in plain sight whilst begging for donations. Don't let Battlefield 6 become the next game to shield these people. This is not Call of Duty. Let's begin with zero tolerance, please. EA or whoever's responsible already dropped the ball by sending some of these big streamers Battlefield gift packs, despite them being Call of Duty streamers and known for sketchy gameplay. And how did these streamers thank EA and Battlefield Studios, I hear you ask? That's right, they all exploited the maps and glitched onto the rooftops to effectively cheat in the beta. Unbelievable scenes. I hope notes were made and names taken. Anyhow, before I start ranting about the state of modern multiplayer gaming, I'll call it there. Battlefield 6 is looking good and has room to be excellent, and a worthy entrant into the series. Sound off in the comments below what your experience was like, and what you would like to see in the full release in just over a month's time. If you enjoyed this video, please help a brother out and hit the like button. That's the currency with which exposure hangs on. It helps massively. Subscribe for more gaming content, take it easy, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next one.